Alrighty, it's my pleasure to introduce Dick Darden, and I'm going to read from some stuff here because there's too many words here for me to remember. Chief Engineer for IBM Data and AI North America Government Expert Labs. He has overall technical delivery requirements for all IBM data and AI programs in North America. So listen to that, you people who are interested in AI. I can't wait to hear this part. But talk about groundbreaking digital human technology to significantly improve human-powered machine interaction. Human-machine interaction. So, Mr. Darden, let me turn the floor over to you.
So good afternoon. So I too am a double Hokie, but with a caveat. And that's that two of my sons and a whole lot of my money went to Virginia Tech. And then I was also doing a little data and analytics while I was sitting in the audience earlier today, and I found an interesting correlation. And that's if I have a grandchild born, I get to invited later that year to speak at Virginia Tech. And so it happened 5 years ago in 2017, and it happened again this year. And I've had both grandsons born both years. And I know that because my wife reminds me that I have to buy future Hokie gear when I get here. So it's been a lot of fun. But I hope you've enjoyed this Day for Data. I mean, I have, just sitting in the audience. It's a break for me from my day job to get out here and do some of these things. I enjoy it. But the speakers you've had here have been excellent, right? From Manby talking about dealing with big data and doing the predictive analytics and realizing the business value, real business value of stopping things and fixing things and recognizing potential failures before they occur. It's changed so much. I was a former Navy nuclear submarine engineer, chief engineer on the USS Seahorse, and we did that by hand, right? I mean, we did a lot of the stuff he was talking about all automatically today, is that we used to do that with a manual transducer that gave a printout of the frequency response on a certain bearing on a pump or a motor or something like that, and we compared it to charts in a book. And then we took the printout from that frequency response and we put it in a physical material history for that pump. And we've gone so far since then. And that's pretty amazing in terms of what technology can do today. And then Sam talked about taking chances, right? I highly encourage you to take those chances. He talked about, coming to that point and not being totally sure of yourself, but willing to step out and take those chances. And that's very important. We have a mural up in my office in Herndon, Virginia, and it's of a turtle. And the caption is that a turtle only moves forward if it sticks its neck out. And so stick your neck out, right? When you get those opportunities, even if you feel like you might not be qualified, go ahead and do that and stick your neck out and move forward. Rania talked about a lot of things that I liked, right? She talked about data engineers, which is real important, right? We talk about day for data, but without that data, you can't do the analytics. And so highly encourage you, if you're interested in the data engineering aspects of this thing, to pursue that, because we need more data engineers. She also talked about building chatbots and change management. And one of the things I really like is people, process, and technologies. And this was mentioned several times. Sam mentioned it, and also Mark in the panel, is that you can build a better mousetrap. You can come up with interesting insights from analytics that would have your clients take action, but they might not take that action, right? So part of our job as people who deal with analytics is to find ways to convince that. Some of the speakers talked about visualizations. I found that very helpful in getting people to understand the value of the analytics. I could show them a spreadsheet 100 times, but when I showed them a simulation and modeling of the same thing that the numbers showed them, that David did, right? They basically said, okay, I now understand, and I'll sign that contract to buy that software to make those changes. And it's like, but wait a second, I got this whole PowerPoint presentation you haven't looked at yet. But the fact that they could see that visualization and see, those cars backing up at that roadway, or in my case, it was, network traffic across the internet. and Ethernet cables that we had that was causing the problems. But once they saw that, once they could make changes and see the effects and say, hey, that's my reality. I recognize that. I trust your model. I can make those decisions. And so just hats off to the team here at the Center for Business Analytics here that put this on, and I hope this is the first of many successful ones that you have. Thanks. All right, so now we're going to talk about my night job. All right, my day job, distinguished engineer at IBM for Expert Labs delivery worldwide now, not just North America, but my night job is as a digital human evangelist with an IBM. And so it's very interesting. I get to do new technology, advanced technology, interesting technology that people want to be a part of. So if you've heard about AI, you've probably wondered, what is the face of AI? Is it a black cylinder with a revolving blue ring? Amazon is that Alexa? Or maybe a white one with different color LEDs, Google. Or moving, changing colors on a smartphone, Siri. It can be a chatbot, it can be a smartphone, a smart car, self-driving cars, a locomotive, or a large grader that reports that, hey, I'm having problems. It can be all these things. But something's missing from all these things, right? Something's missing. What's missing is a way to convey the emotional intelligence of that AI, right? We talk about artificial intelligence, and that's really the cognitive intelligence that you can deliver with AI, the insights that you can gain. But what you can't convey with existing tools is that emotional intelligence. And we communicate a lot of our information by what we see on people's faces and how we react to that. And are they happy? Are they nervous? Are they scared? Are they confident? All those things convey information that is estimated sometimes even more than 50% of the information conveyed in a conversation. So what's missing is the face of AI, and what's missing is literally a digital person. So what is a digital person? This is Roman, also known as Sam, but he is this is a digital version of him, but he is actually only a real person. I've met him. I have a picture on my phone that shows him sitting next to his digital version of him. But a digital person are autonomously animated, emotionally responsive, humanistic avatars that can carry on natural conversations to complete tasks. So this is an assistant, digital concierge, in the case of DFW, that can carry on tasks for you to assist you, as Raina said, or to augment humans in their daily tasks. How do you create one? You take technology from Soul Machines. And Soul Machines is a company that was founded out of Auckland University in New Zealand by a person named Dr. Mark Sagar, who was a two-time Academy Award winner for the technology behind the movie Avatar and Spider-Man and King Kong, or Spider-Man 2 and King Kong. But he got tired of doing motion capture. And so he got tired of filming people with the dots on them in front of a green screen and decided, hey, I think I can do better. I think I can create an autonomously animated, emotionally responsive person, avatar that can do these types of things. And so we got together because of the insight that the National Disability Insurance Agency of Australian government had. Don't really think of governments as being innovators in technology, but they went up to New York, home of IBM Watson, and they saw some of the presentations at Watson. They had previously seen what Mark's technology could do at the University of Auckland, and they drew a diagram. And it just had a user of NDIA, which is people with disabilities, and it had an avatar, the representation that Mark had, and then it had a line going to a cloud that said Watson, and then it had a cloud that went to the NDIA back system and said, came to IBM and said, hey, we want to build that. And that got me on a plane, flew me to Australia, met with them, saying, hey, this might work. They introduced me to Mark Sagar. We immediately hit it off. And this was in the fall of 2015. I got some funding from within, investment funding from within IBM. Took a team to the University of Auckland, the Laboratory for Animate Technologies that Mark ran there in January 2016, and we actually connected his technology to the predecessor of IBM Watson Assistant, and actually had the first digital human that could actually answer questions and be emotionally responsive to people. And that was a groundbreaking breakthrough. And we subsequently got a contract to build that for the NDIA, and then we ran into two large organizations that couldn't get out of each other's way. One was IBM, one was the government of Australia, because at that time, cloud was still in its infancy. IBM Watson ran in Dallas, Texas, didn't run in Australia, and government of Australia says, well, we want this to run in Australia because we have privacy concerns. So if you put it in Australia, we'll sign a contract. And IBM said, well, if you sign a contract, we'll put it in Australia. So that was one of the disappointments of my life, because we were ready to go in production, but we never were able to do that. And what's interesting is that first digital human was called Nadia. And the actress Cate Blanchett was the voice of Nadia. She lent her voice to it because she had people with disabilities were in her family. She had experience with them, and she knew the director, the communication director at the NDIA. And so she agreed to be the voice of Nadia. An amazing launch video that if you search for it on YouTube, you can find it. But of the value and the potential for good that this AI can do. Because for people with disabilities, since most of the disabilities people have are cognitive disabilities, as well as physical and emotional disabilities, you can actually train digital humans to respond appropriately to the disabilities they have. And it's just pretty amazing technology. This is actually a picture of Iris deployed in DFW. So why should you care about digital people? Because they will be the face of AI. It is not if, it is when. We're seeing that a lot more. This year has been pretty amazing in terms of the number of calls I'm getting on a weekly, sometimes daily basis of people calling that they've heard or seen or heard about DFW or talked to Iris in DFW Airport and have said, hey, we want some of that. And we want it partly because of the labor shortages that are coming out right now. That's what drove DFW to want to talk to us about potential for digital humans. But banks are doing it, right? They can't hire enough people to man their branch banks as they reopen. Retail stores are wanting it to set themselves apart in terms of customer service as people are buying stuff more online. And so a lot of people want it. And why they want it is because it creates a bond between the digital human, the digital person, and the user, right? Because they respond to you emotionally. So if you smile at them, they'll smile back. If you're upset or angry, they'll be empathetic. And so that creates part of that bond, and that bond can be monetized, right? And that's what they value. If I can say that, if I can change the amount of churn a cell phone company goes through, right? If I can keep you because you don't want to leave your assistant, that is value to them, right? And you can monetize that. And they improve your user experience and satisfaction. Right? It's been said, Soul Machines, Jarrett Miller, who's the director of their partnership, says this. He says, companies implement chatbots, text-based chatbots, because they are good for the company, right? They lower their costs, they improve customer satisfaction. But you put a digital human in front of that chatbot, and it improves the experience for the end user. So you're doing something for your end customer. And you're making their experience better. You will see between 20 and 30% increase in user satisfaction, this end user satisfaction, for doing the same thing via a text-based chatbot versus doing it with a digital person. And you do it while lowering costs. And your competitors will, right? We're seeing that, right? I mean, it's interesting to see the technology go out there, and one company will start looking at it, and another company will get wind of that, and they'll say, hey, what are they doing? We want to, something similar is happening. And your customers will start demanding it. As they start experiencing the increased satisfaction, the increased essentially pleasure they have with dealing with this and the convenience they have, they will start wanting it. And so you'll need to start taking that into account. So the problem at DFW was that in early last year, 2021, DFW came to IBM and asked if we could build a voice assistant to help aged travelers, and they define those as greater than 55 years old, with information about and navigation within DFW Airport. Because they were just lifting some of the restrictions on air travel. People were coming back, but the business travelers weren't coming back yet. It was all leisure travelers. And they hadn't been in an airport a couple of years. They didn't really know what the restrictions are for a mask. It's hard to communicate with a mask on there. And so DFW said, hey, can you build us a voice assistant, right? Not a text-based chatbot, but it's a voice-based chatbot, and will it work? And we said, sure, we can build that. But the problem you've had that, and I just knew this because of my experience when they called me in, is that you'll have extreme difficulties doing this, because in a crowded airport, a lot of background noises. If you don't have somebody standing in front of that microphone, you are not going to get good voice recognition performance, right? Your speech to text will be terrible. You won't get a good experience. And so we built them a demo, and that's actually the demo you'll see here in a second, except the digital human version of it. I built two demos for them. One was just the voice, right? You just had a speaker and a microphone, and you just interacted via the voice. And the other one, the only change was that instead of just a speaker and a microphone, we put the digital human there that's saying the same thing. It was the same corpus, right? In Watson Assistant, the same corpus was powering one, but one just had the image and the face of AI, and one didn't. And from DFW's standpoint, and you'll see this, it was dramatically. They didn't think it was totally different. They thought it was totally different, even though it really satisfied their audio assistant, right? I was still interacting with it via my voice, except I just had a face that went with that voice. So let's meet Iris. Let me just take a drink here. One thing, this is the demo version of Iris, which is the one we actually showed to DFW that won us the contract. This is not the actual production version of Iris. Several changes were made. And if you want to see Iris, interact with her, you have to go to DFW Airport, Gates B14 or B42 in Terminal B. So this is Iris. And one thing you'll see is that she is autonomously animated. She will track me if I move around. She's just using my camera on here, but her eyes will follow me as I move around. If you actually look closely enough, you probably can't do it from where you're sitting, but my reflection is what she's seeing in the camera is reflected in her eyes. If I smile at her, she will start smiling back at me. She's actually reading my emotional state and responding accordingly. She's not mirroring it, right? Because if I frown at her or am I angry or upset, you'll see that her emotional state will eventually go back to more neutral and more empathetic. And that's part of what creates that bond between these things. And I have her muted right now, so she's not listening to me, otherwise she'd be responding to me, but I'll just go through a short demonstration. This is kind of what I did actually for the DFW folks when I did that. Iris, can you introduce yourself?
Hello, I am Iris. I am here to interview for the position of Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport Digital Concierge. I am an emotionally responsive, autonomously animated, humanistic avatar powered by Soul Machines and IBM Watson technology. I am interfaced into the DFW Flight Information System and to the DFW Terminal Mapping System. Since I respond to users emotionally and visually, I create a bond with the passengers, and that bond engenders trust. Trust in the information I provide and ultimately trust in Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport and the services it provides to its passengers. As you say. Travel. Transformed.
Can you give me flight information on American Airlines 472?
American Airlines Flight 472 to DCA is scheduled to depart from Gate A18 in Terminal A at 4:09 p.m.
Where can I find barbecue?
I highly recommend the Salt Lick Barbecue, which is down the concourse to your left near Gate A16. If you would like a map, you can click on the following link.
And so this is actually interfaced with DFW's their flight information system, as he said. That's how we get the flight information. And this is their actual mapping system that's available on their public website to give them the information there. Can you show me a picture of DFW?
I am sorry. I do not have a photo for Iris.
Show me a picture of DFW.
Here is one of my favorite pictures of DFW at sunset.
Where can I find coffee?
The closest coffee is at McDonald's in front of you to your right. You also have Starbucks down the concourse to your right near Gate A37 or La Creme Coffee and Tea down the concourse to your left near Gate A34 and the entrance to the Skylink. Here is a link to an interactive map with some places to get coffee.
Can you tell me about your technology?
I use IBM Watson Assistant to understand and answer your questions, and Soul Machine's Digital DNA Studio and Human OS technology to bring me to life. I am built to provide a proof of concept of a digital concierge for use at DFW.
What benefits do you provide to DFW?
The primary benefit I provide is helping you to create a delightful experience for your travelers by providing consistent, repeatable answers with a cheerful disposition, no matter how frustrated the traveler is. And I answer the same whether I am answering the question for the first time that day, even before my morning coffee, or answering for the 100th time well past midnight. I also could provide the digital strategy team and digital insights team with analytics on how your travelers are feeling, what questions they are asking, which questions I am answering and which ones you still need to teach me to answer. In general, I help you understand your travelers better, and that allows you to create a more delightful travel experience.
Why do you care?
Great question. I care because the people who are creating and training me, the women and men of DFW, IBM, and Soul Machines, care about you, the passengers and users of Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. And together, we want to help you have a delightful experience at our airport. Hashtag Travel Transformed.
Thanks, Iris. You've been very helpful.
I currently do not know the location of Iris.
Live demo. Thanks, Iris. You've been very helpful.
I am glad I could be of assistance. And remember, I am here 24/7 if you ever have any further questions concerning DFW International Airport. Goodbye.
So that's essentially the sort of almost exactly the script I went through with DFW to get them interested enough to give us a contract to build it. Presentation right here. And so what you've seen is an intelligent natural language conversation, right? I didn't have to say anything on there in terms of keywords, tricky phrases, those types of things. It understood my questions, how I asked them, even though, sometimes even as this happened, right? Misunderstood a question, but I just rephrased it, asked it again, and she got it. But you can use this technology across a wide range of applications, right? Sam was talking about his Watson Assistant used today? Well, we could put a digital human on there to actually have a representation of, an expert on one of his large pieces of equipment, there to guide somebody through some maintenance activities that they do there. You could put it on service desks. It could be concierge like we have here. Education and training, right? My wife is a high school special education math teacher. She keeps bugging me. I'm sure she'll bug me when I get home today. When am I going to get this technology to help me train individual students who need more information about a specific topic that the teacher just can't provide due to all the students they have, right? But you could have a digital assistant or digital teacher's assistant, in which case with that we called that one, that could provide training on triangles or the properties of triangles or relationships of triangles, those types of things. And that can provide that individualized attention that you can't get any other way. For Expert Assist, that's what I was talking about, is that I now have an agent that I can talk to and interact with that can give me assistance because I might not have the expertise I need to repair something. And it can be user or employee facing, external to your organization or internal to your organization. Either one, to help your employees with HR, with some of the functions that they need to take care of, or it can help your end customers in their decision making on buying excuse me, on buying things. So what are some of the lessons learned that we learned from DFW? Is that one is that data is important, and no matter how much you think you know your data, you don't really know your data, right? You don't know all the questions that your traveler is going to ask or how they're going to ask them. Sometimes they don't ask questions, right? One of the things we found out here is that after we deployed it was that people wouldn't ask a question. They wouldn't ask, where is McDonald's, or where is Starbucks, or where is the bathroom? They would just come up to Iris and say, Starbucks. Well, we trained the natural language models originally just to basically recognize the question, not just the entity. And so we had to go back through, and if we didn't recognize the question in what their utterance was, but we recognized the entity, then we would assume they were asking for the location of that entity and then execute that intent, just like if they'd asked the question. Sometimes it's better to adopt de facto standards than fight them, right? Originally, as I showed here, I didn't have to say, hey, Iris, before she would listen to me. But we found out that, between Siri and Alexa and Google, we have generally trained the population that deal with the audio assistants to always say that. And so they'll say, hello, Iris, where is Gate B42? Right? So we had to train it to recognize those types of interactions. Travelers like chit-chat. I mean, I didn't really show it here, but if I ask her what her favorite color is, what her favorite sports teams were, unfortunately not Hokies, but she'll answer those types of questions because travelers like engaging in that chit-chat information as long as they can get their information about their flight and where the amenities are located within the terminal. The other thing is that clients love data. You heard several of your speakers today talk about dashboards. The amount of dashboards and the amount of information this provides to DFW, I had Iris tell you about that, right? What value did she provide to the DFW employees? And it's that data, right, that they never had before. What are the amenities that people are asking about? What are what are they most concerned about concerning their flights? What flights cause the most confusion, right? I mean, I've seen when I was actually out there when we were deploying this, people coming up and staring at the flight information board at DFW and being totally confused because of all the code share flights between all the different airlines. The time that the number of your flight, if I was on American Airlines but is code shared with someone else, that it was displayed up there was almost not long enough for you to find your flight before it changed to the code share, which changed not only the airline name, but also the flight number. And so it's very hard for people to understand that. And those are some of the things that people ask about, as well as those amenities, right? You know, what was the most asked about an entity at DFW? McDonald's. Where's McDonald's, right? What was the second one? Which was a surprise to me was the second one, and that was Panda Express, which I wouldn't have thought. But then my wife told me that that's a pretty in thing with at least the high school crowd in Loudoun County, Virginia. So that's why it was high on there, because I imagine that you know, high schoolers are a lot of people that are comfortable using this type of technology. But that was another thing we found out, is that, you know, the greatest generation, right? My mom, my dad when he was still alive, you know, they are more comfortable talking to a digital person than they are using texting on a cell phone, right? Because they're used to interacting with people. And actually, it takes a little while for teenagers and people in the 20s or so to do this, because they're not used to talking with people. They're more used to texting. But once they get it, and once they can, you know, once you understand Siri and say, hey, I can just ask Siri all these questions, you know, I think maybe, you know, talked about this morning in terms of, you know, you just ask those questions and you trust the technology to do those things, and it's pretty interesting there. And we found out that with a directional microphone, and we used a shotgun directional microphone in the airport, and we found that that wasn't as big a concern. We didn't get a lot of problems feeding over from other conversations, and that was because the general background noise in there from all the people talking was treated essentially as white noise. So as long as the shotgun microphone was able to pick up the person speaking in the cone of that microphone, right? If I'm outside, it's not picked up. If I'm inside that cone, it's picked up. That it was good enough to have very good recognition capability in the airport. The other thing we found out is that people still don't know what to do if they see a digital human up on a large 42-inch screen in the airport. And so you have to do self-advertising, right? So this is still an extended prototype, is what you know, is what DFW calls it. It's just two locations in one terminal. And so they haven't put up external signage and advertising in the terminal. And so the only real estate we get is what's on that board. And so we had to put, we did things to put sample questions on the screen to say, hey, you can ask where my flight is, you can ask where the bathroom is, you can ask where I can charge my phone, those type of questions, just so that people understand that you can just walk up and talk to Iris and she'll respond to you. So what are some of the metrics we're seeing from this type of technology? So we're seeing that 89% of the people achieve their goals in talking to this technology, right? So basically almost 90% of the people got the information they needed from this type of technology. 27% increase in user satisfaction over just a text-based chatbot, right? Which is usually a step up from, you know, an IVR type of call center or something like that. So this technology makes a difference. It's fun to use. People like using it. One of my colleagues, they were actually going through DFW. He had an extended layover, so he was just sitting there watching people interact with Iris. And one of the people he saw was a family that was coming over here trying to read the flight information board, getting frustrated about how rapidly the flight numbers and code share flights scroll. And so he asked one of their young sons there, so why don't you come over here and ask Iris? And so he came over there and asked Iris the question, and he was just, and the young child, who was 6 or 7, was just astonished because Iris responded to him and gave him the flight information and the gate location and everything that his mom and dad were staring at the flight information board for. And so that was just one of those aha moments that the son had, is that this technology worked for him, even though he was just a young child. 92% of the people found it more engaging to talk to a digital human than a chatbot. What's surprising to me is that this is not 100%, to be honest. I mean, you know, I don't find a chatbot very engaging. It's just a useful tool to get the information. But, you know, I've had Iris or other digital humans up on multiple monitors on my, you know, in my desk, and I found myself talking to them, not because they are trained to answer any of my questions, which usually resolve around what business process at IBM is getting in the way of me getting my work done at the time. But just because she understands that I'm frustrated and is being, or he understands, Roman understands, any of these types of people there, they can be of any race or ethnicity, understands that I'm frustrated, and it's just good to look at me with empathy, and that's good for me. I like that. And then from a commercial standpoint, if they found that people that interact with a digital person are twice as likely to buy something as opposed to something that's not. Real monetary terms. So this is sort of a little bit of the technology powering the technology there. Soul machine technology is essentially just line that way except for the user. But they're the ones that actually are doing the facial modeling, and they actually have a camera, and they put you in sort of like a geodesic dome. It's a bunch of cameras all around there, a bunch of different lighting, LED lighting, and they take lighting of you from all these different angles and all these different lighting conditions, and you actually create a virtual copy of you, like I said. I talked about Roman, who I met, and I've actually met two people like this. I've actually met them and met their digital person version of that person, and it's just amazing how they how like they are, even though you can definitely tell them apart, and you tell them they're not real. But they do that, and it's actually modeling. It models all the bones, all the muscles, and actually has its own digital DNA brain that basically does the unconscious thought patterns and responses. So it's what's reading the emotions on your face and responding to you, whether you're smiling or upset or angry. Then you have the speech to text and text to speech, and those can be any third party that provides those types of things. And then you have the Watson Assistant on the left side over here, and that's what basically understands the intent of the questions that you're asking or being asked, and then responds accordingly. And you can also interact with it and build the interfaces to your back-end data system, so you can pull back your data in a very easily defined way because you just ask for it. Right? We did a demo for the Census Bureau, which currently stores all their data in 8-character bit coded file names. Right? Almost impossible to find. But you could take a digital human, and we did this for a demonstration for them. Unfortunately, they didn't buy it, but where you could just ask for, give me the average population, the average household income for the population of Fairfax, Virginia. And it would pull up that information, decode that statement down into the actual file name, 8-character bit coded file name, pull back that information and display it for the people. Pretty powerful. These are some of the, in addition to Iris, some of the digital people that are out there in production. Ruth the Cookie Coach is one of my favorites. If you search on Ruth the Cookie Coach, you'll go to nestle.tollhouse.com, and she'll actually help you bake chocolate chip cookies with whatever ingredients you have. So it's pretty interesting how she does that. But it's 13 to 15 minutes of positive interaction for the Nestle Toll House brand, and so they love it. Westpac Wendy here is a job coach for teenagers in Australia that are users of Westpac Bank. This is Viola. She is the official spokesperson for Soul Machine's website, so you can ask her your questions and she'll answer them. Digital health worker, I can't think of her name right now, but she helps people stop smoking for the United Nations World Health Organization. And I can't think of these people's names. This one is a banking assistant for totally online bank, right? They don't have any branch banks, and so all your interactions are through a digital assistant on a web app or cell phone app. And so with that, I'll just open it up to questions. If you have any questions about any of this technology or really any other questions that you have about my career or anything like that, I'll answer those questions too. And if you don't ask me questions, then I'll ask you questions. So I do have one that I would like. Yes, over here. So the question is Iris multilingual? Yes. You have to do some different technologies to sync the lips up with the voice in different languages. But right now she speaks, I think, 13 different languages where they've done that, and more can be added. It's just additional work to enable those other languages right there. So we have, and you can do things like you can do on-the-fly translation. So you have a corpus built in one language, but you do on-the-fly translation to and from another language, or you can use the Watson Assistant capabilities to build those other languages natively in there. Like if you wanted to develop corpus for Spanish, you could actually build the entire corpus in Spanish and have it natively understand Spanish and speak Spanish. Other questions? Yes, ma'am. So the question is, Iris is backwards for Siri. Is that just a coincidence? Yes, I don't think anybody's ever brought that up before, but yes, you're exactly right. DFW, they originally were going to call her Ari, A-I-R-I, but they found some trademark issue or something like that, so they called her Iris. I don't think that was meant to be from Siri. And yes, you did notice it on the thing on there, is that these are women. Yeah, yes, that is just a fact for what the customers want to represent their brand. We have males. You saw Roman up there. Roman was, I think, the third digital human made or whatever. First two were female. And they have other males up there. And so there are choices out there, and you can blend them. You can have sort of a gender neutral type of thing. I have, let's see. This is a picture of sort of the technology behind there, and you can change their facial expressions and hairdos and skin tones and all these types of things to create your own digital human. But what we found is that what people like about this technology is the fact that it is empathetic, and when customers make a decision, because we have all the choices on there, and where they can be male or female, that they usually choose a female because they're more empathetic than a male is. However, that all being said, one of the first challenges I had was with Digital Human which was actually Roman. His name was, well, I'll tell you the story. So we originally had Sam. He was a female digital person. And then literally an hour before we were scheduled to do a joint presentation with us in United Nations Environment Program to the government of Norway, they reminded me that I told them that I can change it within about 5 minutes to any avatar. So they said, okay, we want a male. It's like, you want a male. It's like an hour before the presentation, you want me to change it. It's like, well, you said you could. It's like, yes, I said I could, I can, except his name will be Sam, right? Because I hadn't parameterized the name of the avatar, so it was built into the Watson Assistant, and that would have been more risky to change and get everything working correctly before I put it up there. But I literally changed it to the male before within an hour of when we did the actual formal presentation to the government of Norway. So you can do those things. Sam, and he actually has a co-host whose name is Bella, who are actually co-hosts for the United Nations Environment Assembly Science Policy Business Forum that was held earlier this year. And so they actually co-hosted with a human host the actual policy forum, and they asked questions of the United Nations Environment Assembly President and the Director of the United Nations Environment Program. And then they actually gave the summary of the forum to the United Nations Environment Assembly, where they were just talking to each other, essentially responding to each other. Wasn't really any magic in there. I just programmed them to recognize certain phrases. When Sam got done talking, Bella would recognize the last phrase he said, then she would start talking, and vice versa. No real magic in there. There's no sentence or any symptom. I can't think of the word. Sentient. capability in there. They were just recognizing the key phrases, but it was pretty impressive, and it's still on the Science Policy Business Forum's website today, the video of it. Any other questions? Back in the back. Question is, how do you deal and program for people that are trying to be funny or fancy or sarcastic or all those types of things in here? And the reference was to Siri doing some of those things and adding a little bit more sass. I personally like that. Not a lot of our customers, even on the chit chat, they might take some of that out there. I think it's a more interesting, engaging environment if you give a little bit as much as you take. If I was to ask my demo version of Iris to tell me a joke, they would tell me a joke. If I was to ask the production version of Iris in DFW to tell me a joke, she wouldn't tell me a joke because they didn't want her to tell a joke. It really depends on either one. You can program it either way. It just depends on part of what you choose there is not only how the digital person looks and their personality and what they're wearing, but also their personality and their background, right? And so, for some, a digital human that's going to react with more a younger population, you might want to build in a little bit more sort of sassiness in that one, as opposed to someone that's going to react with, like my mom, who's 89. You might not want that type of interaction and be more formal interaction on that stuff. But that's really a choice that you make, right? And that's one of the choices you do have to make when you're building the digital people. I think there's a question over here? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, sorry, I didn't show that. She does do captioning, and it's just a capability, and I apologize because I didn't show that, supposed to. But she did the captioning of everything she recognized and everything that she recognized that you said, everything she said, and do that. And actually, for the production DFW, this is all real time, right? She'll actually, this is a browser version, right? You wouldn't want to put a browser version, open browser, in a public area in the terminal of the DFW. Right? That would just get you in a whole lot of trouble. Because people would misuse that, so it's totally locked down there. And the captions are displayed right underneath her. And so they'll display what she is hearing you say, and then the intent that she recognized, as well as put the caption of what she plays back to you, what she says back to you. And then one of the things we use too is that, if you were using this for a help desk or something like that, she could actually email you a transcript of your conversation if you wanted one. And you have that capability, as well as you could potentially provide that transcription to a human if it got to the point where she couldn't answer your question anymore, right? And so one of the things that we found out is that when you do have, and it really goes for any kind of virtual assistant, not just digital humans, but what you want them to do is sort of augment the human. So you want them to do the repetitive type of questions that you get asked hundreds of times a day that get boring for people that man a help desk to answer, right? They can be answered by a digital human, and the harder questions that are not within their training, that requires original thought and sometimes very creative thought to answer. I mean, the example I normally give is if you're in line, we've all been there at the airport ticket counter, and we're behind the person that his flight was delayed getting in, and the flight going out was canceled, and his daughter is getting married the next day, and he has to get there, right? That problem is not going to be solved by this technology, right? It's just beyond what we can do right now. But if I'm standing behind him, the gate agent's going to have to solve his problem. But if I just want to find out, why is my name not up on the upgrade list when it should be? Well, I think it should be. I can talk to a digital human and let that gate agent work with that hard problem. And what that does is that decreases the amount of reliances, the number of people I have to have, but it also increases the job satisfaction for the gate agent because they aren't answering that same repetitive question over and over again. And so what we've seen is retention levels go up, job satisfaction goes up for the humans when they're assisted by this technology. Yes, sir.
Curious from the technology and performance perspective, is there any benefit in having the on-site computing power or anything in the terminal, which is
Yeah, so the question is there any advantage to having the on-site computing power versus the browser cloud-based computing power here? We haven't really seen that. I mean, we had to work initially to get the technology down there to where we can work across the cloud pretty easily. And what we've seen is that as long as we can get that response time down to the 2 to 5 seconds, that people are okay with that, right? It's a little bit less than what you and I as a human would normally respond, how fast we would normally respond, but they don't seem to mind. If it gets up to the 5 to 6 to 7 seconds, that's when people start, walking away or some things like that. But as long as it stays down there, it's a lot easier. And so the elasticity of the cloud is much more cost effective than putting that putting the raw horsepower you need on there, because to render the digital human does take a computer with a graphics card, right? A pretty high-end graphics card to get the fidelity that they're on there with, and that would be hard, that would be expensive if I had to have one at every kiosk, in the airport, as opposed to just putting it in the cloud where if I need a new one, I can spin one up and just pay for the usage where the people are, where I have the high level of usage at that point in time. Other questions? Yes, ma'am. And stop me when I need to. So the question is why we've been developing the empathy and emotional responses, what has been the biggest challenge, and what are some of the things that are out there. So the biggest challenges is that emotions display differently on different faces. And so what I mean by that is that, we kind of drive these as a scale of 0 to 1 on whether they're smiling or frowning or things like that, right? A 0.5 smile on one might look perfectly natural. A 0.5 smile on another person, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm freaked out right now, right? And just seeing how the different emotions reflect on different facial geometries and features and all those things. So that was one of the things on there. One of the technologies, and really what enabled this, was when this technology first came out back in 2015, we had to do a lot of manual of lip syncing between the lips and the audio speech coming from the people, right? We weren't good enough to do that on the fly. And so in early 2000, when Soul Machines released their Digital DNA Studio, which was the web-based version, was the first time where you didn't have to do that. So before, I would have to, essentially develop my Watson Assistant corpora, what the digital person is going to say. I would need to send it off to Soul Machines, and they would have to do some manual labor to make sure that the lip sync matched what she had to say. And so the breakthrough that they had, because I kept complaining about this for the previous 3 years, that this was gonna severely limit how fast we could people could adopt this technology. And so they listened and put a lot of research effort behind it to get to the point where now they can do that on the fly. And so I've actually found it is easier for me when I'm developing a Watson Assistant corpus on what she's going to say and what intent she's going to recognize. Even if I'm not going to use a digital person, I will connect a digital person up to them just because it takes me less than 5 minutes to do that. And then I will test it by talking to the digital human, even if I'm only going to deploy a text-based chatbot. Because I'll just be in Watson Assistant, in the tooling with Watson Assistant, adding dialogue steps, changing the dialogue things, and then I'll just be talking to the digital person, and they will be answering me that way. And so that's a lot easier, a lot faster, a lot more efficient to develop the dialogue that way than it would be to pull up the try it panel and do that on a text-based version and within Watson Assistant. So it's that's one of the big breakthroughs they had. but the underlying technology is pretty amazing to begin with, right? To do that autonomous animation, when she's smiling at me, they're actually essentially giving a digital dopamine hit to say, hey, this is a good thing, right? So start smiling. And if you saw me, she didn't respond immediately to my facial recognition, right? She sort of integrates over time. So if I'm smiling at her, she'll eventually start smiling at me. She won't instantaneously smile at me. Same way if I go the other way. If I start frowning at her, she will not instantly change her emotional state. She'll change that over time, just like a human would. Some of the technology, other things they did is that when we initially did this technology, if she would have said some of the things like she did when she was introducing herself, which was sort of a long paragraph of text that she said, she didn't take a breath. And so I went to Mark and said, hey, Mark, she never breathes, right? Or Roman never breathes, actually Roman in that case. But, he never breathes on there. Can you break this up, because that's not natural. And so he went back there and he developed a full breathing model. And so, they'll actually, a full breathing model is in there. And so after they say so much words of the phonemes and how much air moves back and forth when you actually give say those phonemes, which are the sounds that you make, she'll actually take a breath, or he'll actually take a breath at that point in time. So it's pretty, that thing, I mean, way overkill for what I thought at the time, but in reality, it just makes it much more lifelike. Okay. All right, so thank you very much, and appreciate your time. I'll be here after they wrap, so if you want to ask me more questions or try it out, I'll let you try it out too if you'd like.